guess I will stop there. I think I've probably
Yeah,
talked enough.
that's great. And I like the idea of that not being crisis sort of dependent, that you know, that it's interwoven into the fabric of society, that there's a kind of deep yearning for community, even in times of normality. And there's something about normality that is dysfunctional, because there's you know, and there's something about power here that you know, where are we getting our needs from? And is that something that can be sustained? You know, and who has, so there's a kind of, almost as though the only entities that we are really not allowed, but really where the structures enable us to relate to, are, and this is a generalization, but are essentially the, you know, big corporations and a system that is, you know, is central to the mining of the planet, and to an incapability to really process what it is taking in a way that benefits other elements in nature, so that instead you get pollutants that are causing destabilization, for instance, of the Earth's climate. So there's something actually pathological about the society we're in, which is why communities of an alternative kind are an important, I think, component of the solution. And I just want to center more on power, because money has such a major role here. The financial system, which, if we think about it, has no value. So if we think about wealth, it actually has no value in and of itself. It's not something we can eat. It's not something that provides us in itself with any service. So what is it that does have value? And my own sort of conclusions are that it's nature. The only thing that has value is nature. And when I say that, I include the human world as well as the non-human world. And money is simply meant to be a method or a system that enables the material aspects and the services that are in nature to fluidly move to whoever would like to purchase them. So money is essentially a kind of catalyst to enable needs to be met, but it's become mistaken to be central, whereas nature is what is central. And it's become that nature has become subservient, a slave to the monetary system, when it really needs to be the other way around. Nature needs to be central, and the monetary system needs to be in service to the regeneration of that which is real wealth, the natural system, which includes us. And I'm just going to narrow it down to a few qualities, key qualities that I feel, and there are more, but just what's alive in this moment for me around regenerative community. And one is this: what is real wealth? And it's nature, not money, not fictitious money. The other aspect is the history aspect and story, you know, and the kind of healing of our past. And that there's a kind of getting to know those who are different to us that is related to this. So there's a social healing and a recognition of our past histories and stories, which I believe are part of what makes community, is an owning up to the past and taking responsibility. Another aspect I would say is celebrating life through the arts, through story, through ritual. So celebrating of life and the evolution of life through of death as well. That really taking care of these moments in life of transition, of meaning, where we can have rituals and allow that psychological aspect to be taken care of, because these are crucial moments. of letting go and moving forward as a bigger community than the individual. And then also an aspect that I really want to touch on that we've sort of worked on is how, you know, and how can we bring those qualities outside of even a kind of land-based community, and so that if there's an opportunity for community to crystallize, the qualities, the skills are there, and that is around conscious group work and, you know, conscious relating to one another, the ability to listen deeply, the ability to facilitate the drawing of wisdom in people, the ability to gather ideas that includes those on the margins to as well to inform how we move forward as a community. So skills in holding space, in allowing difference to emerge, but with the trust that that will contribute to a richer, inclusive direction. So, and now I've forgotten kind of where I was heading with that, but that's, so there's something around, yeah, around holding space, around group work. But also, yeah, I was going to really mention that it's also about how to deal with conflict. And often we're very conflict avoidant. It raises strong and comfortable feelings, and what's going to happen if there's disagreement, and yet if conflict isn't resolved and processed and transformed, it hangs out under the surface and it actually runs the show in the background. So there's something about being patient with conflict, which to me touches on Islam, the idea of sabr, you know, and always staying in relationship. You know, I mean, I find that hard myself, and that's why you know, I say that as someone who wants to co-create these sort of things with others. And just finally, where I want to put, you know, where I've had obstacles with community and where I want to put my energy, there's a question of diversity. Is it multicultural enough? Because I would like to participate in this sort of thing that is relatively diverse and has that multicultural richness, but also faith. Where does that play a role? And I'm not sure I would want to be just in one faith necessarily. I think there's something about being in relationship with difference of beliefs as well. But for me, the energy, and I know, yeah, we both explored this sort of in practice, where could this be a possibility? But what I want to bring forward, where I want to put my energy is around how these qualities, the social qualities, how can these social qualities for community actually be strengthened? And that's kind of where the energy, I think, wants to go now. The skills of interrelating and drawing out wisdom and decision making and organizing together and taking care of one another and getting that, and you know, and then I think it's also something about that we don't always have to know exactly how to get somewhere, that we can have that general intention and just stay actively conscious. And I think that with others who also share that can be really, really powerful. So I'll hand over to you now to finish.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, so what should I say? I think that the power thing is really important, and the time element, yes, because part of, I guess, how the societies we are in are the reason why they're like this is that we in democracies, Western democracies, we've basically paid people to represent us and make decisions, and that works in different Western democracies to lesser or greater degrees of success and representation. But
Want to repeat that, Shumaisa? Just the last 10 seconds.
Just that even the Western democracies that are held up as great examples, like the Nordic ones, are still entangled in extraction elsewhere and exploitation elsewhere. So the element of time, so the examples that are more of this regenerative societies in like Rojava in northern Syria, or that Cooperation Jackson in Mississippi are doing, are addressing that power imbalance and organized around um, worker organized or managed enterprises and people's assembly type ways of decision making, and community safety instead of policing, for example. So yeah, the power, and that comes down to time and all the skills you mentioned about how to organize together. And I think a lot of the reason for the structures that we have of one part, paid group of representation, or in businesses like a certain smaller group of people decision making, comes back to the time thing. um, and then another thing is around, yeah, the um, aspect of self. Like I early just before the pandemic, I was speaking to this Kenyan person who's thinking along these lines and trying really hard to set up these kinds of things in some small way, and in London. And um, and he was saying like that the people in in more in the global south, or indigenous peoples in the global north, have that idea of communalism in a selfish way, in the sense that they're still about meeting the self's needs, but the way to do that more effectively is through communalism, to to more efficiently meet the needs of every single self. And that's kind of like the wider self too. And sometimes I think I'm going a little everywhere, but sometimes I think about like things like postpartum depression, and it's like I don't hear about this. I never knew about it in like going back to Pakistan, and people there when I was growing up. Unfortunately, things probably creep into these other societies as they've become more like the West. But it just wasn't a thing, because that wider aspect of self, you know, it just doesn't happen, because mothers are being taken care of by their surrounding kind of community. Um, and so, yeah, so just it's just interesting about what that I thought that person from Kenya said about that communalism is selfishness in a different, in a way that people embrace it because it's a good way to meet my needs. And I think that a lot of people who get involved in the things that take more time, like you said, about decision making and dealing with conflict and stuff, they know that, but they would never go back to their, let's say, in a work setting, a regular way a workplace is structured. Um, because even though it's time consuming and stuff, they're just, in terms of their mental health and fulfillment and well being and respect and dignity, and often also not harming the ecology and wider communities that we're a part of. Literally, I mean, the soil and the beings in the soil become part of us. Um, and everything that we depend on, the water, the air, it has to do with, the oxygen, these wider notions of self, like the trees and the, so yeah. And I think that to a big extent, the answer is already out there. Um, um, Even in the West, through what certain indigenous groups and Black groups, you brought up the Black situation, unrest in the U.S., that they've been working and thinking through this for years, decades. They have like the answers, a lot of them, um, but are just marginalized because we're so conditioned into that that's not possible. This is how we are. We're in this kind of structure of working and living and being. But they set up the mutual aid stuff, way back when. It's not like from today or yesterday or whenever. And same with Indigenous people. And I guess if we go back far enough, probably would have been the case of everyone on this call, or I mean, depending on where your more recent ancestors are, maybe still would be the case. So yeah.
Great. Excellent. Great. Okay, so we'll leave that as the conclusion. That's fantastic, and we'll in a moment draw everyone back, and then bridge into a group discussion, a group conversation around, in reflections on what we've shared between us, which again is not meant to be a coherent presentation that is unflawed, that we will rigorously defend or anything like that. And so others can contribute on their reflections, but maybe more centrally, their own experience with community in the past, the interest in it, and obstacles, and in the present, and opportunities, and what the thirst is for. So just we can start to flesh that out a little bit. Great. So thank you, Shumaisa, and I'm going to end this bit of our meeting, the recording now.